Hey, everybody, welcome to our seminar today. As usual, we are going to be covering the 9.5 things that every seller needs to know in order to sell their house in this market. Now, as you are aware, if you're watching this or have heard our team or me talk at all about the market's insane right now. Even the big brains in the industry, like Gary Keller, have been quoted as saying, this is the most confusing market we've ever seen. And so we're going to try to help you guys make sense of this. We're going to try to help you get your house sold in this crazy market that we're experiencing right now. So we're actually still calling this the Future Seller Seminar, 9.5 things you need to know when you're selling your house in this absolute insanity. So what's the point five? Well, you're going to have to stick around and find out. As promised, at the end, I will make sure and tell you what that point five thing is. So why do we do the seminar via Zoom? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, we want you to be able to view it whenever you want to view it. We actually tried some seminar events at certain times, and what we would hear back is, oh gosh, Mike, I'm so sorry I couldn't make your seminar. I really wanted to hear that information. Now you can access this on YouTube, on Facebook, both my personal as well as the Tanner Realty Group Facebook page, LinkedIn. Those are really the four areas that you can see this on, but we wanted you to be able to view it on your time, not on ours. So if you have any questions, I'm always available. Feel free to shoot me a DM or an email, mike@tannerrealtygroup.com, or to give me a call on either our Oklahoma numbers or our Pacific Northwest phone numbers, either way. And by the way, this applies equally to the Oklahoma City market as well as it does the Vancouver, Portland, Oregon market. So these concepts that we talk about, these are not geographically specific. These are real estate in general, things that we're seeing across the nation that you really need to know in order to get your house sold. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Number one is pricing. What we are seeing right now with pricing, everybody's asking me, how's the market? How's the market? And what they mean is our market prices going up? Are they going down? What's going on? Well, here's what's going on in short. Houses are still appreciating, but they're just not appreciating as fast, or they maybe have gone down from the peak a little bit. Now, if you bought here and you wanted to sell up here, but you only get to sell here, guess what? You've still made money. And so things are not depreciating, they're just not appreciating as quickly as most sellers would like. So typically we use a form called the Total Market Overview Report, the TMO. You may have heard me refer to that before. It's a snapshot of the last 6 months. Well, the problem with this right now is that 6 months ago, the market was dramatically different. And so that snapshot, that amalgam of the last 6 months that we typically use to price out houses really doesn't give us the full picture anymore. So we have to really dive in and look at market analysis right now to make sure that we are pricing houses correctly, because 6 months ago, it's long gone. This market is just moving too stinking fast to keep up with the Total Market Overview Report that we normally use. But the same rules still apply. If it's priced too high, it's going to sit on the market. It simply will. And I hear sellers all the time, well, hey, maybe that one person will come along. Well, yeah, that's true. And, to quote the old sitcom Alice, when pigs fly, right? Typically, that's just not going to happen. Buyers are not in any hurry to overpay anymore. The pendulum on that has swung back the other direction. They're not looking to overpay anymore. They're looking to underpay. And so you're going to be waiting an awful long time if you price that house too high. If you price it too low, we still have some sellers maybe wanting to do that. It creates a bit of a feeding frenzy, which, hey, on the DIY network or HGTV makes for fantastic drama. In real life, however, it stinks. It's terrible. And you actually have to go through legally all of those offers. So if you get 25 offers on a property, which may sound outrageous, but a year ago, we were getting that. You have to go through every single one and respond to every single one, and it makes life absolutely miserable. So it's a horrible idea to underprice and create that feeding frenzy. You really want to market your house, and really that's what the price is. If you think about it, it's a marketing tool. And so you want to market your house with that price point as accurately as you can to make sure that it's a fair deal, not just for you, but also for the buyer. And you don't really want to price it with what you need as a seller. You want to price it with what the market will bear. And so make sure you get a professional opinion on that when you do that. I've seen far too many sellers lately going, "Hey, I want this, I need that." Well, guess what? I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the market doesn't care what you want. It simply does not. And so you need to put yourself in a position that you are going to get the appropriate price on your house. And the best way to do that is talk to someone like me or one of our team members that I've trained to be able to market that house and price that house appropriately. The second thing you need to know is the timeline of a real estate transaction. This is the same nationally. Now, they all go a little bit differently per state, but I'm going to give you kind of the overview. So it works in Oklahoma, it works in Washington, and it works in Oregon, the three states where Tanner Realty Group currently operates. The first is once you get your house on market, we get an offer and you accept that offer. And that's when the timeline really starts. Typically within about 3 days or right about then, earnest money from the buyer is due. And an earnest money is not free money to you, the seller. It basically is like a deposit for telling you how serious that buyer is. So they're going to deposit that with the escrow company. And the next check mark is the inspection negotiation deadline. So once you go under contract, you have roughly 10 days, depending on the state, roughly 10 days to 2 weeks for the buyer to get that house inspected. You, the seller, allow them to do so contractually, and they negotiate any repairs that they want done. Now, as the seller, you can tell them to go pound sand, but I wouldn't recommend that in this market. Typically, you want to use kind of that three-step formula that we talk about. If it's broken, you as a seller really should fix it if it's broken. Number two, if it's cosmetic, well, we've priced the house. We've helped you price the house. If there's a cosmetic issue there and maybe it needs some updating, no, that's not really fair to have the seller pay for that. And secondly, if it's worn, hey, you know what? It's not a brand new house. And so you want to make sure that people are following that plan. And by the way, we can walk you through that a little bit more, the BCW, the broken, the cosmetic, or the worn, and what you should be responsible for and what you should not be responsible for. And then after that, once those negotiations are done, that's really where the lender and the underwriters take over. And so they order the appraisal, they get everything done with the loan on the buyer's side, and then we come to closing. Closing, some people think, is when you sign at the escrow company. That's not when closing is. Closing actually is when everybody has signed, both the buyer, the seller, the lender has funded the loan on the buyer's behalf. Everything then goes to the county. And when the deed actually transfers from the seller over to the new owner, the buyer, that is when closing actually happens. So that's a brief walkthrough of the timeline. If you have any questions about specifics, as always, please feel free to reach out to me. The third thing you need to make sure that happens in your real estate journey in selling your house is still photography. Do me a favor on this. Listen, if you hire me, you should, by the way, hire me or a member of our team. But if you decide to do it on your own, if you decide to hire somebody else and they get out one of these, an iPhone, to take pictures of your house, run away. Please run away. It just does not work very well to get unprofessional photos out on a listing. You want to make sure that your house is presented in the most accurate and professional light possible when it goes on market. And iPhones, as great as they are, folks, I love my iPhone, okay? Whenever I lose my phone, which feels like every other week, I freak out more than a teenage girl because there's so much business on my iPhone and so much that I do on there that they're very important, but they're still not very good for taking true professional photos. You need to hire a realtor who's going to get a professional photography shot done for you. The next thing you really need to do in order to present your house in the best light possible, the most accurate light possible, so buyers really know what they're getting, is do a video walkthrough, both drone and video walkthrough. We see a bunch of these that are maybe also done on an iPhone. I wouldn't really recommend that. You need some professional recording equipment. We like to hire ours out and bring in a professional videographer to make sure that that's done. When I first started using drone photography and drone video in our listings, it was kind of the cool new thing to do. But the very first house, it was on Garfield in Camas, Washington. I'll never forget this. The drone shot was really cool, and it just came up from the roof, and it was just a straight down shot of the roof is what it was. And the comments we got back were, man, that was really cool. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know, that's why we put it in there. But the follow-up comment was, yeah, it was cool, but the neat part was the roof looks like it's in amazing condition. And I thought, huh, I didn't even think about that. But it's true. You get to see if the gutters are empty, you get to see the condition of the roof. If there's, some of the shingles are damaged, if the boot jacks need to be replaced, if the mushroom caps are damaged and worn or whatever. And so you really get to see the condition of the roof. So that drone photography and that drone videography is quite important. The next thing that we like to do, and this is number 5 if you're keeping track at home, is a 3D tour of your property. Now, some people say, hey, these things make me seasick. I don't like it. They give me motion sickness when I walk through the house in a 3D tour. Totally understand that. I do. And they're important because, again, you're going to hear this like a broken record from me. It's important to have the most accurate description possible of your house and accurate representation via video, via still photography, via 3D, because you don't want buyers to come in and go, well, gee, this doesn't even look like the place, or, oh, hey, they use one of those stupid fisheye lenses. I knew it. You don't want that. You want people to come in and go, man, this looks exactly like the photos. And they're more apt to put down an offer when they see that. 3D tour is just another medium to get an accurate description of your house out there. We like to take things a little bit further with that. We do the 3D tour, but then we also have a 2D floor plan rendered from that 3D tour. And it's kind of cool because the sellers, inevitably, when we do that, they're like, man, that's really neat. How did you get that? And they want a copy of it. So it's kind of fun to get that and see your house as the seller, as it looks like new construction blueprints. So it's kind of neat to do that. Now, not all detailed out like an engineer would do, but you can still get an idea of the blueprint of the house. So 3D tour is pretty important. Number 6 is MLS representation. This is key in any listing, and really what you need to know as a seller is the MLS representation is important because, number 1, if you put it out there and there's no MLS representation, realtors are going to be calling you directly, which, trust me, is not fun. Number 2 is once we put that up on the MLS, that's where all of the big websites go to pull information. It's also where all the realtors go to find houses for their buyer clients. But in addition, that's where Zillow pulls from. That's where Redfin pulls from. That's where Realtor.com pulls from. All of them. Land and Farm. I even had a listing one time. It was a blueberry farm in the state of Washington. And I got a call and they said, hey, Mike, we saw your listing on Land and Farm. And I'm thinking, Land and Farm. I didn't even know I listed on Land and Farm. Well, we get things out in such a way through our MLS representation. We also have a few other tech tweaks. We get it out in over 350 websites, most of which I've never heard of, but there is a niche market for each one of those. It's kind of cool. So that MLS representation is quite important. The next thing is digital marketing, and this is number 7. You really want to make sure that digital marketing is on point for doing this. And this is everything from Facebook to Instagram to TikTok, you name it. It needs to be out there. LinkedIn, it needs to be on all of them. And by the way, it needs to be paid advertising. Paid advertising is huge because, listen, I can share it to all my family and friends, and I've got a fairly decent following on social media. But if all I do is share it to my family and friends, guess who's going to see it? My mom. Love my mom dearly, but my mom is not going to buy your property, okay? She has her own property that I've sold her. And so she's not going to buy your property. Odds are my friends, yeah, I've got a fair number of acquaintances and friends on social media, but odds are they are not going to buy your property. What needs to happen is mass marketing through digital marketing and through digital media, through social media, so that way tens of thousands of people can see what's going on with your property. And odds are we're going to find somebody for you when that's the case. The next thing that you really need to consider in selling your house is transaction management, transaction coordination. The timeline of the sale that we talked about before, that's a lot of stuff to remember. There's a lot of documentation flying around back and forth, and you want to make sure that you've got a realtor who has a transaction coordinator backing them up. It's really important because as a real estate sales professional, we're going to have multiple transactions going at the same time. It is critically important that we don't get your sale mixed up with one of our sales out of state. So we need to make sure and have a licensed transaction coordinator on our staff, which we do, by the way, in the states that we work in, to make sure that they are tracking those every single day. And that is their job, is to track where your sale is at, your transaction is at all times. So they can update either myself or one of our team agents to know exactly what's going on. They help us go live on the market. They input stuff into the MLS, help us track all the offer timeline once everything is accepted and done. So from contract to close, those folks really step in and help us out, and they're amazing. I've always had a transaction coordinator my entire career, simply because it's really, really important that I stick to what I'm good at, and what I am good at is working with clients. I'm not real great at the backroom paperwork. So we bring people in to complement my weaknesses and make sure that we can get that transaction done in an effective and efficient manner. Now, number 9, what turns off potential buyers? This is another thing that sellers really need to know. And it's really overly personal items that turns people off. I was showing a house in East Portland one time, and there was a big, huge flag for that listed a certain presidential candidate. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't care what your political leanings are. I really don't. And you really shouldn't care what mine are. You should care that I'm going to do a great job for you. But it was a very conservative flag that was flying in East Portland. Given the neighborhood, it was very out of place. And I actually had these buyers that said, Mike, we're not even going in that house. We're not even going in there because they're clearly a divisive seller. Now, it wasn't my listing. I was working with the buyers. But what I learned with that was, don't put anything overly personal or divisive in your house. I mean, quite candidly, if someone wants to give you your asking price for the house that you're selling and you can move on and accomplish your real estate goals, do you really care what political party that they affiliate with? I don't. I just want to get the job done for you. So don't have anything in there that's too overly divisive or political or overly personal. Guys, I've seen some awkward stuff in houses before. I really have. I used to share a couple of stories in the seminar, and the rest of our team's like, dude, you can't say that anymore. There's just way too much weirdness going on in some sellers' houses. And so you want to make sure and avoid that. Um, it's I'm not going to tell them. I promised my team I wouldn't. So we're going to move on. So those are the 9 things that you need to know as a home seller. What's the half? Everybody wants to know, Mike, what's the half? Like, it's the biggest deal. It's pretty common sense. Here it is. It's actually the one thing that, if you don't hear anything else in this seminar, the one thing that you need to do in order to get your house sold: clean it. Make sure and hire professional cleaners to come in and give your house a good, deep clean. Man, when I walk into a house, I want it to smell like Pine Sol, old school Pine Sol. I want to know that layers of filth have been taken off of those floors or off those countertops, because nothing sells better than a clean house. And by the way, this is regardless of price point. It can be a $10 million house It can be $100,000 house. Doesn't matter. If the house is clean, it gives it a much better showing presence, and it gives a much better opportunity for offers to come in if it's a clean house. And this is an investment property. This is an owner occupied. This is first time. This is everybody. Make sure that house is clean. Some people will say, oh, you know what? You should have the scent of fresh baked cookies when you come in. In Portland, really? Where half the people are gluten free? No, you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that your house smells clean. And when people come in, they get the scent of cleaner. That's what I want. Like I said, pine salt. That's what I'm looking for. I want to make sure that that house is as clean as possible, because there's a lot of things that we can overcome as real estate sales professionals. A dirty house is not one of them. We can't cover that up. So make sure that your house has a good deep clean. So one thing you really need to do. I think I've nailed that enough. So thank you so much for joining us today. Whether you're catching us live, whether it's on a replay, whatever. And hey, I'm actually quite good at replying back to social media posts. So if you need something from myself or one of our team members, please reach out. My email is mike@tannerrealtygroup.com. Phone numbers are on the website. We'd love to hear from you.